Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave and Evelyn from the camera store, and we have the brand new Olympus OM-D E-M1X.
For extreme. Now we've taken this camera all the way from Florida to the Yukon.
Now Olympus brought us to Florida. They put us up for a few days and fed us so that we could shoot NASCAR at Daytona as well as the Baker factory for motocross so we could test out their new tracking AI modes.
This camera screams sports and action shooting. It has this brand new mode, so it's got continuous autofocus tracking with AI. And what this means is if you set it for the motorsport mode, as a car or vehicle enters the frame, a white box goes on top of it. And in the past, we used to focus on the car and it would follow the grille or whatever focus point you had it on, but this is actually hunting for the driver's helmet or some eyes or something else, not just the grille of the car.
Yeah, and you can do this at 10 frames per second mechanical or 18 frames per second electronic.
And when you see it in action, it's really, really cool, and it allows you to focus on your framing more so than the autofocus.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing if you're shooting something like motocross. It's really, really satisfying when you're looking at, say, a mound of dirt, and then all of a sudden the motocross bike comes over the mound and you're able to lock on that focus automatically with the AI mode, and it does everything for you. And we found the hit rate was pretty good, but the most satisfying thing was just seeing that it continually tracked and you basically didn't have to do anything. So far, the only deep learning modes that are in this camera are for trains, planes, and automobiles. What happens if you're not photographing
trains, planes, and automobiles
and you still want that tracking? I mean, it would be so cool if eventually they have like profiles for, you know, like wildlife or soccer or other kinds of sports.
And I would be shocked if they didn't update the firmware to include more subjects as they adapt to it.
I really hope they do. But for now, you can still use the continuous autofocus plus tracking. However, we didn't notice any massive improvements from the EM1 Mark II. However, I did notice a much better hit rate if you adjust your sensitivity.
Yeah, so depending on the subject that you're shooting, you're going to find that you can customize this camera quite a bit. If I want to increase that sensitivity for something that's much more erratic, it's going to lock on a little bit more consistently for me and get a little higher hit rate. Yeah. But it's something you got to play around with a little bit, and depending on what your subject is, what's going to work best for you.
One of the really unique features about this camera is it has up to 7 stops of in-body image stabilization, or 7.5 stops if you combine it with an image stabilized lens. Now this is huge, and this allows you to capture images handheld for much longer than you would with any other camera on the market. And of course that frees you up from having to use a tripod and gives you a lot of other opportunities that no other camera is currently giving you. Now when you first look at this camera, it seems like a fairly large camera. It looks like a pro body configuration, but it still is a relatively compact Micro Four Thirds system.
Yeah, I mean, it does have the built-in integrated grip, so you can't make the camera any smaller. It is the size that it is, and you have to like it because you don't have an option.
There are 4 custom function buttons on the dial. There's 4 buttons on the front that can be customized. There's some dedicated buttons, including white balance, which is a new thing for Olympus. Basically, this camera is very customizable. Now, of course, one really positive thing about that is this camera is weather sealed. And when we say weather sealed, we tested this. We brought it in the pool, we half submerged it, we took it in minus 40 degrees Celsius weather, we let it hang out in the rain at the motocross track. We basically did everything that you could think of.
Yeah, and it survived. And it seemed to be doing quite well. So, you know, minus 35, minus 40 conditions, this thing was covered in frost and it was still working okay.
Yeah, now that first night that we were there, I wasn't working very effectively, but the camera did okay. Some things obviously are gonna slag, like the LCD screen stops working the same way that it normally does, but otherwise we're really impressed with how well the durability and construction of this camera is in the cold.
And we also took this on a recent trip with Neil Zeller up to the Yukon, where the conditions were extreme.
Yeah, now Neil Zeller, he gave us basically a week's worth of his normal workshop experience in 48 hours, thanks to some of the sponsors that helped get us up there, including Air North, who's one of the nicest airlines that we've ever traveled with. It's not fancy, but they treated us really well. And their claim to fame is that they serve everyone on board fresh, warm chocolate chip cookies at 38,000 feet. We stayed at Sundog Retreat with rustic, adorable cabins, the nicest people, and incredible aurora viewpoints. Of course, it was our luck that the day we got there was the first cold snap that they've had all winter, and it caused a huge power outage to the area overnight.
Hey guys, it's just a little after 7 in the morning. We woke up minus 35 conditions and no power, so this could be an interesting day.
So it was a chilly wake up because it's electric heat in the cabins, and so we just decided, instead of getting up and leaving at 8:30, We're getting up and leaving at 7, and gonna get a head start on the sunrise out in Kluane National Park. So we'll go find an open coffee shop.
Everything is better now.
All right, so everyone, we're gonna head west on the Alaska Highway here. We're gonna head out toward Haines Junction. The light up here comes across the top of the world sideways, and it creates a different quality of light that's just unbelievable. We're not getting anywhere today. We are like 110 kilometers into this journey, which we are probably going to try and drive maybe 600-700 return, but the light just stops us at every corner. So minus 40 out, and here we are standing on the Alaska Highway, and we're looking at these colors. I hope you can show those colors. The white, the sharp line of the white into that blue shadow and into the pink sky with the trees, and oh, it's just nowhere else. Yukon light at its best.
Yeah, now we had a lot of fun shooting at the Sky High Wilderness Ranch. We were able to shoot dog sledding. They hooked us up with an amazing experience. We had a very short amount of time, but we were able to check out the continuous tracking with video. And I was pretty impressed with how well it tracked, even though I was freezing and shivering. And that stabilization was really impressive too. It's like buttery smooth. You basically don't even need a gimbal. The other nice thing is that they've added OM log, so it retains more of that shadow and highlight information. So if you don't mind doing the grading work, that's great to have.
Yeah, and it does shoot in 4K in 30 frames, 24 and 25 of course as well. And it does have a full HD mode that gives you up to 120 frames per second for your slow motion kind of acts. Of course, it does include a microphone jack and a headphone jack. These are sort of crucial these days when it comes to shooting video.
Yeah, and the articulating screen is bright and responsive, and we like that it fully articulates. Now, in terms of what's inside of this camera, it is the same sensor as the E-M1X. It's a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor. Now, before everybody jumps on the whole idea of it not being a full frame camera, let's just talk a little bit about what micro four thirds is. It is a much smaller sensor. However, because this has a high res mode built into it, you are able to effectively get a 50 megapixel image. And the cool upgrade to this camera is you can do that handheld.
You can see how it turned out. High res mode handheld.
Yeah, so the stabilization on this camera is insane. It was impressive with the OM-D E-M1 with select lenses, but this takes it up a notch. I think they're saying 7.5 stops of stabilization.
Yes, yeah, it is the most image stabilized camera that is out right now as of when we're shooting this, but it is pretty impressive. Even for video, it's very, very smooth, and you are able to get those handheld high-res shots. So it takes about 15 seconds for the file to cook, and it's a 50 megapixel image. So it's pretty cool. And for still moving stuff like mountains, it's great. The only time you have issues if there were moving branches and stuff, you'll get some ghosting. If there's anything that has a heartbeat or anything that's moving in your frame, it doesn't look great. It gets really mushy. But if it's something that's absolutely still, like we shot like architecture or we shot at the NASCAR, the stands, you're gonna get really sharp edges and it's gonna look fantastic.
And it is really impressive that you can do it. It combines 16 photos.
Yes,
right?
it is 16
so
photos.
In high res mode, you push the button, it takes 16 photos and stacks them all together. But you can do this handheld. This is really impressive.
But of course, if you're a commercial photographer, like our good friend Steve Spear, who's an amazing photographer, you can still use your tripod to shoot high-res shots. Now, that's exactly what he's been doing for several years using an older OM-D body. He's been able to get these high-res shots and has even made an installation in Calgary. So we went to check it out to see what it looked like up close from a micro four thirds sensor.
All right, Steve, so this is really impressive. What is the actual size of this print?
So the vinyl is 19 feet by 12 feet. Okay. And it was a 3-image stitch shot in high-res mode using the Olympus Micro Four Thirds. Some people might consider it a limitation, but because I can shoot in high-res mode, it gives me the equivalent of a medium format file from a Micro Four Thirds camera, and these images they attest to the quality of that type of image making.
We do have to talk about that viewfinder.
Yeah, the viewfinder is okay. It's perfectly usable, but
It has a fast refresh rate, which is good if you're shooting sports in action. And they're saying it's a progressive scan, and it is also higher magnification than the OM-D E-M1X. However, the resolution is the same, and we've been spoiled with really incredible EVFs. And so looking through this did feel like we're taking a step backwards compared to some of the other cameras that we've seen. In terms of usability, I think that they did a lot of things right. I like that the ISO button is textured and that the exposure compensation button is a little bit raised. Everything is nicely placed. The dials are nice and tactile and really firm. I also think that the menu system is okay. I mean, it's still an Olympus menu system and some of the tabs are quite deep, which takes a little bit of learning.
Very deep.
However, the My Menu system is really great and actually pretty intuitive to be able to set up.
Yeah, if you find there's certain features in the menu system, no matter how deep they are in there, that you want to refer back to all the time, you can add it to the My Menu system very, very quickly. Basically, go to the menu, select the item you want, push the record button on top, and it adds it to one of 5 different tabs of your choice.
Yeah, and if you want to remove something, again, you just tap that record button and you can remove it, change the order, and you can really make a great small custom menu option for yourself. In terms of battery life on this camera, we pushed this camera to the extreme. When we were in the Yukon, we decided to photograph Aurora Borealis at night, which meant standing in the cold at minus 44 degrees Celsius. And we had to sometimes leave our cameras in a potato field and go over to a fire so we could warm up our bodies because we couldn't last.
Yeah, so it's,
it's
basically a time lapse. We're doing 20-second exposures and we just let the camera go and go and go.
Yeah.
So the camera's freezing. So it does use 2 BLH1 batteries, the same as we're using on the E-M1 Mark II.
Yeah, the CPA rating on the batteries together is about 870 shots. Now, the most exciting thing to us, of course, was that it had USB power so that you could charge the batteries in about 2 hours. When it comes to image quality, I really, really want to love the Micro Four Thirds sensor. And I know that there's a lot of photographers out there that can really work with it and they get great results. However, you're still not getting as good of an image quality as you would with a full frame or even an APS-C sensor.
Yeah, I find if you've got decent light and you're shooting in lower ISOs, the results out of here are really quite good. If you look at the dog sledding shots I've posted and versus the motocross shots I posted, one's at 1600 ISO and one's at a significantly lower ISO, there's a drastic difference between those 2 images there. So when light gets a little more sketchy, that's where I find the Micro Four Thirds starts showing its weakness.
Yeah, and not to mention, if you're shooting wide open and you're trying to blow your background out, the look of it isn't as nice as a larger sensor.
Now, something I do appreciate, if this camera is so loaded with features that if I'm going to go out shoot sports and wildlife and I'm going to be carrying this all day long, certainly the smaller lenses make this a lot nicer. If I have to carry a 600 f4 from Canon or Nikon, it's a massive lens.
Yeah.
You have a bag dedicated strictly for that.
Yeah, I mean, we had a backpack with 2 bodies, probably 3 or 4 different lenses, including a long telephoto lenses, and we were able to have that as a carry-on bag.
Yeah, yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that if you're shooting with like a 1DX or what have you.
No, so there's a significant weight saving, and it certainly helps you out that way, but you have to accept the results you get out of this camera and what it is.
But yeah, and there's some cool stuff, like there's a new thing called the ND mode, which allows you to photograph using kind of like an ND simulation. So it compiles some images for you right in camera, so you can get the look of the smooth water, like an ND filter. The price point of the body is $38.99 Canadian, which is a tough
pill to swallow.
It's a pro level price point. And this does have a lot of pro features. You have the dual card slots. You have the fast shooting. You have the continuous tracking autofocus. You have the best image stabilization. And those are all really important features. But for that high level price point, there are a few things that we would have liked to see.
Yeah, I would like to see the viewfinder sort of up to the same level of like the EOS R or the Nikon Z series.
Yeah, in terms of resolution.
I also kind of have a beef with the battery. I mean, it didn't let me down, but I think they could have put in a Pro Series battery pack, much like a 1DX Mark II or a Nikon D5.
Yeah, I can see why they did this, because if you were someone that were upgrading your system and you had some of the older batteries, you can utilize those. And of course, it was probably easier for Olympus too to put those batteries out.
Yeah, now they could just come up with a carriage to hold the older batteries in there as well.
That's true. Yeah, that'd be nice. And of course, that would all just be part of the package of having this pro level camera. But we hope that you enjoyed our full review of this camera, shooting in Florida as well as the Yukon. We did it for you guys. So let us know what you think by commenting below.
Yeah, make sure you follow us on Instagram. We love getting the likes.
And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you again soon.